Hello, good evening, and welcome to the War Room. This is day 19 of Russia's illegal incursion into Ukraine. And for those of you watching, Slava Ukraini. Glory to those of Ukraine. It's a little bit of a shorter episode. The stories today, there weren't many, but they're pretty heavy, I guess. And strangely enough, the story of the day that I have for you that is, I don't know. I guess the best way for me to describe it is it's going to be the cover of Time magazine. I just have a funny feeling because it encapsulates the the horror of what's going on right now, and it's tied to a very sad event um, for humanity, I guess is a good way to put it. But we'll get into that shortly. I wasn't very clear about the topics of the day in the description. We got a few of them in there, but I've got a few past that. It's just usually I've got like 20 something stories per day, and today it wasn't really the case. So we may get through this one relatively quickly, but I do have a lot of panelists today, strangely enough. So maybe it'll drag on. And I wanted to add a feature to the show. Originally, what I had planned to do was to get an episode out where every one of my panelists would present certain stories, but the collaboration to do that with the timing um, for the timing of the layout, it just wouldn't have worked because they might overlap or they might all have duplicates of one another. So I don't really have time to give them the ample time they need to arrange that together. So you'll just have to deal with me presenting the bulk of the stories as usual, much to their relief because they're like, "What's your show?" So I guess that's part of it. But I am grateful to have them, as I am grateful to have you come watch this. I do apologize for the later start. It's just, I really had a lot to do today after work, and I ended up saving a squirrel that was having a seizure. I know that sounds stupid, but I even got the video. I don't know if I'll post it on social media because it doesn't really matter. But yeah, it got busy. And all my panelists, they had their various reasons for not being here yesterday, and now they're all suffering from daylight savings time hangover, which honestly, if someone wanted to make an argument to get rid of it, I would probably help them. So, anyway, as such, I do have what appears to be five panelists. So, we've got a full house today. So, I guess what I'll do is I'll go ahead and start dragging them in. And the first person I will bring in is Jaime Zaporozhizhia. And if he starts talking about holsters, it's just because I dragged him in the middle of a conversation. So, just bear with him. So, there he is. He comes to us from the West Coast, state of California, but don't hate him for it. He's a gun owner and a rancher, and he's trying to become an educator in probably one of the harshest environments in the country. So, good evening to you.
Hello, how's everyone? Thank you for the invite.
No problem. And I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put us in this view because as I start dragging them in, it'll scale it correctly. Oh, looks like I'll have five panelists. Fine. Um, four panelists, that is, plus me. So my next is, I believe it's my tradesman from the New England-ish area. This is Scott P79 on the server. I've got him listed as Scottish Naya, but if you're part of my Discord, you'll see what I'm talking about. I gave everyone like Russian or Ukrainian names. So good evening to you.
Evening.
And let's see, my next panelist is going to be, um, well, you know him as Night Strike. He hosts the sorry, I was thinking of his other shows. He hosts Hit or Miss Tuesday nights, typically at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. However, he's been very gracious to do them earlier in the day and much abbreviated so he could come and be a part of this show. So, without further ado, Mikhail Naitstraitsky, coming to us from Charleston, South Carolina. So, good evening to you.
Good evening.
And my last host is, I don't know where he's at though. He's in the Midwest, I think, somewhere, right?
Yeah, just go with Midwest.
All right. Well, and my last to round us out is Desert Eagleton. So, good evening to you.
Good evening.
I think FNH wanted to go to bed early, right? I think he said
Yeah.
that earlier. Okay, so like I was saying in the intro, we've only got a couple of stories for you. I think it's about 12, maybe 15. So we'll get through these relatively quickly, I suspect. But I do have a very interesting segment. It's going to be a panel discussion. So what I'll do is I'll sort of preface it with the news of that event, and then we can all discuss it, ad nauseum, what we think about it, because there are very differing opinions on what the response should be. And for you in the audience, just so we're clear, I'm not referring to Iran's attack on the U.S. Embassy in Iran. That event may tie into this one eventually if this actually does end up being a global conflict. But for now, it's a separate event. I think it's partly because Iran is looking at us at a moment of weakness and they're like, this is the time we attack. So they just did it because they knew that we were geopolitically weak temporarily, or whatever it is. And if China gets involved even further, then this absolutely becomes a global conflict. And it's one of those I told you so's that I never wanted to actually own. But, I mean, it's just like Asia is just branching out in every direction, isn't it? You got the East pushing East, you got the West pushing West, and now you've got Iran in the South pushing everywhere, supposedly. Whatever. So we'll get into a discussion based off of a different event, but it'll bring it all together, as you'll see. So, just for the sake of getting things going, because I've already burned 7 minutes of your time with the intros and such, let's go ahead and get into the first story. I will specify what I feel is the story of the day, and we'll talk about that a bit, but my first two aren't that. So let me go ahead and pull up the first caption of the day for you, and it's just this. And it's basically a apartment fire, which you've seen every day in your regular news. They happen all the time. The only difference is this one was caused by a Russian missile out of an aircraft. So about 2 o'clock, 2:40-ish, actually, sorry, about 2:45 Ukrainian time. So you can see that, like, most of the morning stories, there weren't any. Like, nothing happened early in the morning, supposedly. At least for post factos or whatnot. So one person has died Monday and 3 have been injured after a Russian airstrike hit an apartment complex building in Ukraine's capital of Kyiv. Here. Images taken after the airstrike showed the building in flames as first responders evacuated those inside. So at the time this story was written, there was one confirmed kill, but, the numbers always change after post facto, much like the third story I've got for you, so you'll see. Anyway, that's the way that their morning started, was missile strike by an aircraft. Not with a Y.
No whys.
All right, so my next story is a little more interesting. I suspect that the longer this conflict goes on and the more actors become apparent in this tragedy, this tragic play called war, I suspect what you're going to find is either NATO, the UN, or the United States intelligence community is going to create the deck of cards again. So they're, preparing you for easy identification of potentially high-value targets, individual. And so I took it upon myself to give you the Ace of Spades today, because this guy's a fucking monster. So anyway, like, he may look like your good old boy Prepper, but I guarantee you he's not. The strongman leader of Russia's Republic of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov, has posted a video where he claims he is in Ukraine and is preparing to join the Russian forces heading towards Kyiv. In the footage, which could not be independently identified, Kadyrov says he is in Hostomel, where the Russian military has been bombarding an airport. The video also appeared to show Kadyrov being briefed by Chechen troops, and in 2020, he was individually sanctioned by the U.S. over human rights violations such as torture and extrajudicial killings. This guy is he's a professional paramilitary hitman, and he works for a puppet government, and he answers to a Russian dictator.
Are we surprised? We
Not
shouldn't be.
really. It's like, I, how did Putin find this guy? He was like, well, here's my country of lapdogs, and this one seems to be wagging his tail an awful lot. What will you do for me? And he'll say, I can kill anybody you don't like. Is that how that works? I don't know.
No, I believe they have files. For
Do
such
not
things.
insult me. We have very detailed files. Yeah, that, right?
Very detailed.
Well, he
files.
sought this guy out just like he sought out the Wagner group. So he's really in company with some, well, how do you say this? How would Joe Biden say this? He's in a company of really bad dudes. Right? So when I saw this picture and that sort of shitty grin on his face, I thought that guy's going to look awfully funny when that Canadian sniper Wally, who showed up days earlier, turns his skull into a canoe. Because you know good and damn well, it's like, if the movie American Sniper didn't exist and Chris Kyle didn't exist, like if that wasn't a thing, then there would be a movie about Wally hunting down this guy, wouldn't there? Because you remember in American Sniper, Chris Kyle was hunting down that one like Olympic shooter or whatever. Remember that guy? And he had the Dragunov. It's kind of like the same thing to me when I saw this, and I'm like, dude, Wally's gonna rock your world.
Did Chris Kyle end up putting a bullet through the scope, or that was just the?
No, that was Whitefire.
I think that's a bit of like theatrics in Hollywood.
Okay,
But
well,
did he
that's-
do
I
that
would-
in the
that's what I
movie?
was
I don't
asking.
remember.
I might be wrong.
No,
Maybe
but Carlos
Ryan did it.
Hathcock did that in
I
real life.
know Enemy at the Gates they showed that kind of thing. But like, I mean, I don't know. You guys have seen Mythbusters. That you saw him try to shoot a bullet through a scope, and you know how the glass is curved in different directions for the magnifications. It's like the possibility of the bullet going through all the different glass and still going through your eye is next to nothing. Like impossible.
No, it's possible.
It's possible, but it's improbable.
Yeah.
Because like if it hits that lens, it's curved. It's going to deflect the bullet instantly.
It depends on the time period too,
Well, I mean,
because
Adam Savage.
the new
and-
optics,
Oh, I
the
see
new
what you're saying.
optics they have nowadays have very curved lenses. You know what I mean?
Which would even
But if you go
deflect it
back
even
to, like-
more.
But if you go back to like a fixed 3-power, like from World War II,
Hmm. Oh, you're
That
saying
shit
it might have
probably
been
went
flatter
straight-
because it was just thicker glass.
Yeah.
From your mouth to God's ears. I don't know. I'm not gonna claim to know that.
I know Carlos Hathcock for a fact did it.
Well, I don't really feel like
That's where
taking
that
apart
comes
my
from.
PU sniper scope just to find out.
I don't think he got him with a PU, but I don't know what the Vietnamese sniper was using. But it's confirmed that he did that.
A Zeiss 3X probably. I don't know. All right, so we already got 2 of them down. Cool. Okay, so the third, this is what I call my story of the day, and the picture might be a little disturbing or haunting to you. I know it gave me nightmares the first time I saw it, to be perfectly honest, because I just remember the look on her face and knowing, like, I've done autopsies and stuff like that when I was doing my residency, so this kind of bugs me a bit because, like, in that photo you can tell what's going on, right? The Ukrainian pregnant woman seen in a viral video being carried out on a stretcher after Russian forces bombed the maternity hospital in Mariupol and her baby have both died. That woman there. And you can just tell by the look on her face, right? The AP captured this photo of the publicly unidentified woman. Now, the doctor didn't even know her name. Nobody knew her name. Like, they were just busy trying to save her life. They never asked. So, anyway, so the publicly unidentified woman lying on a stretcher beneath this watermelon-patterned blanket with an empty look on her face was clutching her lower abdomen as rescuers carried her through the rubble. Now, this angle here is a little cleaner. There's another one where you can basically tell that she's covered in blood from the navel down. because essentially she had what ends up being like a miscarriage, the look of a miscarriage where, the baby's deceased and that happens. Yeah, that's just a good angle, a cleaner angle that won't get me banned or struck. But anyway, Surgeon Timur Marin found the woman's pelvis completely crushed, which killed her baby, and her hip was completely detached from the ball and socket joint on her crushed pelvis. So, if any of you know anything about human anatomy, your pelvis is like the foundation of a house, and if anything happens to it, the chances of you recovering from that kind of injury are very low. Like, I had a friend who was a motocross rider, and he landed horribly and crushed his pelvis, and it took them hours to stop his internal bleeding because what kept happening is all of his intestines and everything. Your pelvis is shaped like a giant bowl, right? And that bowl holds all your intestines in place. Well, his pelvis was shattered, so his intestines kept trying to push down and out the backside, if you know what I mean, right? Because like all the weight of his guts were pushing down on him, so they had to like stabilize him by kind of putting him on an inverted table while they worked on him. Well, anyway, that's kind of what happened to her because the place got hit and the hospital collapsed on her essentially, or parts of it did. So the medics delivered the baby via cesarean, but it was already dead, right? So like they took the baby out because they had to get into where the baby was to try to stabilize the mom because she was bleeding out from the inside. And they tried for like 30 minutes to stabilize her. I guess coagulants and clamps and adrenaline and everything. But she had died on the table. And I mean, if you look at the close-ups of her face in photos right here, she knew her baby was dead. Like a mother knows, right? I guess close to delivery, you feel them moving and kicking about, and
They stop moving.
did not
That's when you
no
know.
movement at all. Like she must have known, because like all the color in her face is gone, and she had no will to live. So after they took the baby out, she probably just gave up right there. She was just like, you know what, I'm out, and she died. What was sad is nobody knew her name. Hours later, her husband recognized the photo showing up on the news and traveled, I think they said, partly across the country to collect her body because, he was defending their town. And he said that, he said who her name was, but they didn't put it in this particular story. And he said that she'll be given a proper burial, and she will not be placed in a mass grave like so many others the week before. So it's kind of a tragic ending because this is the kind of photo you're going to see on the cover of Time magazine. This is going to be like, this is the identifying image if Interpol ever gets their hands on Vladimir Putin. This is the thing that they're going to put in his face when they charge him with war crimes and sentence him to... I don't know if the International Judicial Court even has the guts to execute anybody anymore. You know what I mean?
Don't.
Like, I don't even think they do. I think they think we're better than that. We won't send him to die. Fuck that. You put him in front of me, I'll take care of it for you. I will be the next John C. Woods. And if you don't know who that is, Google that. I'll be the next John C. Woods. I don't even need a wood chipper. Give me a chainsaw. All right, so that was my most important story of the day for this, because I mean I see the image, I heard the story, everyone's like, who was her name, and nobody knew, and then this guy shows up distraught as hell going, where's my wife? And everyone's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I saw the pictures in the news, the one you carried out in the watermelon blanket. Oh, you're the guy. I got some bad news for you. Like, imagine that guy, right? He's been fighting for days trying to defend his town or whatever. And then this. He sees the picture, then he rushes to her, and then it's...
I know one thing, he's not taking any prisoners.
No. 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 Then again, does this incense him and motivate him, or does this crush him? Like, we don't know the answer to that. All right, moving on. Oh, wait, before we move on, I wanted to throw the panel discussion here, so because everything else is on the timeline, right? So earlier in the day, before my stories took effect, the first three, there was a missile strike, and was it a missile strike or a long range? I think it was a long range missile strike. They were attacking more western positions in the Ukraine. Their first
Great.
major targets were airports, or not airports, air bases and airports, I guess is a good way to put it. And a lot of the analysts and pundits out there, they were saying, oh, look, this is going on because they're trying to prevent any future MiG deliveries from Poland, right? Everyone's kind of looking and nudging and winking like, yeah, that. And then when that deal sort of fell through, they sort of like, option B is maybe they're doing this because it stops all the munitions shipments and aid shipments into the country. And that seems a bit more feasible, right? That makes more sense. That math checks out. But then again, the Poles are probably just trucking things in because they knew that was always a possibility. So there's still ways to get it in there. And then there's always like, I don't know, the Berlin airlift. If they had to do it, they could probably put them on parachutes and push them out the back if they had to. Like, they're not going to give up on this country, I'm sure. So you got all this going on. And then I think it was sometime this morning, there was another massive attack on a NATO training facility in Ukraine. And what makes this, there's two things that made this particularly interesting. One was the Florida National Guard had recently left there, meaning this could have been instant Article 5, but they weren't there this time. And the base was 12 miles from the Polish border. And I think it was in a region where the fires and stuff were seen from the Polish side of the border. So here's the question I want to discuss with the panel here. How close is too close? And the reason I ask this is because I'm going to stick to the letter of the law with NATO on Article 5. I think there is no such thing as too close. I think it still has to happen across the border into the NATO country. Never mind that it's a NATO training facility in a non-NATO country. But in my opinion, it's like, okay, it's bad, but it still doesn't technically violate the article. So what do you think? Because I heard this distance change 3 times this morning. First it was 15 miles, then it was 12 miles, then it was 11 miles. Someone else said it was like as close as 4 miles. And I thought, somewhere in the middle of all those is the truth. But I'll stick with 12 miles, just as a safe average, because the base, technically, geographically, is 15. So how close is too close? Like, if you were NATO and you saw this, are you on edge? Are you on alert?
No, they're already on high alert.
But, I mean, what do you think about this whole...
Putin's already said any supplies going to them is that country's involved.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he says something new every day saying it's an escalation. And he's the one doing all the escalating. He's the one who brought in 20,000 Syrians. He's the one who's got Chechen death squads. He's the one that's got Belarusian lapdog soldiers. He's the one that's maybe pulling the strings with Iran, too. Who knows? You know what I mean? Like, there's only one person doing all the escalating. This whole war is one person's dying wish, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think if one of those munitions accidentally goes astray and crosses the border, it's on.
Well, okay, so that's a good point. I'm glad you said that. Because I was listening to, like, General Keith Kellogg and General Jack Keane and all these, like, just military minds, right? And they said, so what if a Russian missile just strayed off and hit a Polish building? And the consensus
I think Poland would immediately invoke Article 5.
Well, the consensus was that Russia better pick up the hotline the second it happens and explain themselves, right? Like, we didn't aim at that. That was a rogue missile that veered off course. Like, if they had the decency to pick up the hotline and explain it, it's very possible, okay, that's a fluke, right? The one time. But then again, these are people saying that they're only hitting military targets and they've knocked out 19 hospitals. I don't think that's an accident.
I think
you also got to
Poland
figure
would
that
immediately call for Article 5.
the Russians don't care if people get involved because they said that they're gonna do whatever the fuck they're gonna do, and damn be the consequences.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
when you're fighting a war, right, you fight to win.
So what they'd say is, hey, it's casualty of war, get over it. They wouldn't even call.
All right, so let's use the embassy theory then, okay? If you have a U.S. embassy in a foreign country, the embassy to the walls of that building, from the building to the walls, perimeter walls of that building, is considered U.S. soil, U.S. territory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does NATO have a similar doctrine with their training facilities? I mean, if it clearly says this is a NATO installation, right? Does it have the same type of
it would depend
protections?
if NATO troops were there.
Well, it's a training facility. What they do is NATO representatives come and train the indigenous troops on
Yeah, but
certain
any
tactics.
facility where NATO shows up could be considered a NATO facility.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So they probably don't have like the diplomatic soil rules or whatever.
No.
Yeah.
Not unless that was set up in NATO doctrine, which I don't know.
Yeah.
I doubt it.
All right. So then would you say that there is no such thing as too close? It still has to cross the border?
Yeah, it's
I
going to
think
cross
so,
it,
yeah.
I think.
And then
That cross border.
would you give Russia the benefit of the doubt if a missile really did veer off the one time and they instantly blow up the hotline saying, hey, we saw that and that was not intentional. Like,
No. Well, you are supposing the Russians actually care if they get NATO or anybody else involved.
right,
They don't
but
care.
the
They don't
hotline
give a
is
damn.
meant for that. Like,
Yeah, but you're ignoring the fact that what Putin said at the beginning of this whole conflict.
right.
He says he's told everybody, if you get involved, you'll see a war of likes of which you've never seen before.
And that's when he attacked Chernobyl and Zaporizhzhia and Enerhodar.
Yeah. Yes. And honestly, really, really honest, I don't think he gives a damn. And he's not going to call. He's not going to say, "Oh no, we're sorry."
I agree
He's
with
not
you.
going to apologize.
I agree with you 100%.
The man, I would argue, the man has never apologized in his life, unless that was to the original Soviet Politburo.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, honestly. The only way that I could see that the hotline would blow up is a missile flies into Poland and it hits a porta potty. You know what I mean? Like, it's a complete non-issue facility type thing, right? Like, if it was just, you can tell this thing was flying all, weird and it crashed into a garbage dump or it's just something stupid, right? I could believe that hotline call then. They'd be like, "Hey, broski, sorry about your porta potty. We don't know what happened, but we're calling to tell you this was not intentional." It's like, I could buy that story. If it veered off and it hit the refugee, how would you call this?
Refugee camps.
Well, no, not really a camp. It was like it was at the border where they were letting them in. The refugee processing post, I guess you can call it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it veered off and it hit that and killed like 300 people that were all huddled up, bullshit, right? Not a doubt in my mind.
At that point, Polish forces would have gotten killed, and at that point, Poland could automatically say, "Yeah, fuck you, fuck you up your asses."
Yep.
We're invoking Article 5.
Okay, no, that makes sense to me. That works for me.
Because this is another situation. Remember how I said, a couple days ago, where the only way Poland would get involved if the fighting got really close to the border, and Russian shots got straight across the border into Poland and started hitting targets in Poland. That's the only way Poland would get involved. And now we're kind of seeing that the war is edging that way now.
Okay, I'm with you on that. I got it. Like that, I'm not disputing that at all. I'm in agreement with you on this. I got criticized by my mentor for yesterday's episode, actually, because he kept telling me that I was injecting rants in between every story, but he was like, what you were ranting about was truthful and factual and very impassioned. He was like, but you probably shouldn't use it as a dagger and keep stabbing your audience with it. And I told him, I'm like, no, you see, my aim for this the war room is we need to force people to think. Not force. We need to encourage them to think. And it's like President Volodymyr Zelensky tried his best to make a public address to governments for help. And they said, "Oh, you poor thing. Here's some helmets, or you have our thoughts and prayers, or we'll send you some javelins and this." And it was a fair start, but it wasn't what he was expecting. And then he went
To be honest, those javelins have been doing their jobs.
Oh man, have they been doing those people like okay, so the Ukrainian army right now would be the perfect representative force for a US Marine Corps recruitment video. Because what they would do is they would say the army gets the weapons, but the Marines make them legendary. And it's like, here's a javelin. This is what a javelin can do. And it shows one tank getting blown up. But then it shows that column of tanks that came into towards Kyiv. And it says, but this is how you make it legendary. And it shows the javelin hit the front one and hit the back one. And then a kill box was made. And they took out everything in between. They made that tactic legendary. And I'm just like, bravo. You know what I mean? Like, these people are doing the absolute best with what they've got. And it's putting the world on notice. That is a quality military, those Ukrainians. Like, they're fucking amazing doing that. The kill box thing was textbook. You saw the first one blow, the second one blow, and then all of a sudden everything in the middle started exploding. And you're just like, man, you guys are good.
And to
Who do you
quote
think trained
someone
them?
from the other day, the country of Ukraine actually does have natural resources. The problem is they aren't. It's not enough for it to be strategic resources.
Well, you know what? That is information that doesn't even need to be irrelevant. You know what I mean? Because then you're gonna get the theorists coming in going, so that's why we went in. Do you know what the one resource that Ukraine has that Europe loves? Energy. Look, think how many nuclear power plants they have. Zaporozhye is the biggest one in Europe. They're a net exporter of nuclear energy. They also have one of the biggest hydroelectric plants. That's their pride and joy in terms of what they're giving to Europe. They make energy by the bushel because the land can support it, I guess.
No, I agree. I agree there, but to those that said that they don't have any other natural resources, you're actually wrong about that. They actually have natural resources, just not as much as that would.
They're not as dependent on
used to be
imports as we
referred to as
thought, I guess is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
They are
Well,
one of the
Ukraine used
biggest
to be
exporters
referred
of
to-
wheat, too.
I was about to say that.
Yeah. I got one of the last stories I got of the day will actually detail that a bit, so we'll get there. We'll get there.
All right.
All right, so okay, that was good. I mean, that's kind of what I was hoping that panel discussion would be is so we're all in agreement, right? So it's like it's a shitty thing, but it still has to cross the border. I think we're all good on that.
Yeah, sadly.
Okay. I mean, it's still it kind of sucks, but it is what it is.
Unless Biden takes his pills and says, "Oh, we're going to jump into this war."
He's gonna send in corn pop because he's a bad dude.
He's going to send in a whole battalion of corn bops.
Great. He's a bad dude. What if he looks like that Chechen asshole? Anyway, so next story. I really didn't want to write this one. All right. So 3:58 p.m. Ukrainian time. It's 8 a.m. for me. I just got up. India on Monday is weighing an offer from Russia to buy its crude oil at discounted prices following all the sanctions from the West. Their report cites two Indian officials as saying their government is considering a rupee-ruble transaction. The development comes after the U.S. last week banned the import of Russian oil and gas. Reports also emerged of tanker owners avoiding taking on Russian products over fears that their vessels will get stopped mid-shipment, leading to very costly delays. Now, this is the problem with selling oil. You will always have a buyer. Always. You think that we are hurting Russia by banning their oil, you got another thing coming. Because this is exactly the thing that you got coming. They can't do it by ship because no ship wants to take the risk, right? Where'd you get that oil? You're going to sit here until we find out. That costs Maersk and all those other tanker companies millions just sitting there waiting for customs clearance, basically, right? And if they find out it came from Russia, they're going to seize your ship and they're going to dump your oil. So anyway, the problem with this is Russia can export the oil by pipeline or even by tanker truck to India. Even if it's like a Red Ball Express, to do it, they'll do it. You see what I'm saying? Now, for those of you who don't know what the Red Ball Express is, there was a really good movie made in the 1950s detailing it. Red Ball Express was a bunch of like volunteer and military and like American and British truck drivers. And they were like a QRF of logistics and resupply. Trucks were running constantly. They were trained to run at full speed and stop for nobody. Like touching the brakes was looked down upon, you know? Turn and burn. That's where that kind of premise came from. And I think, I might be wrong about this, but I think the reason it got the Red Ball Express is because somebody tied one onto the nose of their, it wasn't a deuce and a half. It might have been a deuce and a half.
6 by 6.
Could have been a half track.
Well, no, I was thinking it was one of those GMC trucks, like as a 1.5 ton truck or something. You saw a lot of those in the movie. But they sped up the film too to make it look like it was going super fast. Anyway, my point is India, you can get a land route to India to bring the oil in. So, of course, you know, what's oil trading at right now? I didn't look today. Crude oil price.
I think it's like somewhere around $99.
It closed today at... Ooh. Oh, wait, that was ours. Really?
Yeah, it went down today.
Below $100?
Yeah.
You're kidding.
Nope.
Open today 102.28. Closed today 98.67. Okay.
I was about right.
Okay, cool. So the reason I'm saying that is because at a discount, right? When they tried to sell the oil to Shell, for instance, right? Oil I think was at 100 and I want to say it was like 119 or 100. Yeah, I think it was like $119 a barrel at the time, right? Shell bought it at $29 below market value, which means they got it for $90 a barrel, right? 90? Yeah, I think it was $90 a barrel. So they bought it at a discounted rate because they literally had Russia bent over a barrel, right? They were like, yo, we'll buy it, keep it on the low, and then, you know, we'll give you $90 a barrel for it. Like the Russians probably made the offer. We'll sell it to you for 90 just to get rid of it because we need the money because we're hurting, right? Shell bought it, and then that asshole tried to put out that public statement saying it pains him to say that he bought the oil. He made the decision. No, it didn't, because the social media fallout. Now, I'm not saying it was because we posted it. Obviously, a bunch of people posted it. But when everybody, including us, posted that statement from Shell, the social media fallout was biblical. They reneged on that offer within 12 hours. They were like, sorry, we can't take this heat. So they backed out. Right after that happened, then they started asking, wait a minute, who the hell's providing the ships that's holding this oil that Shell could have bought? So then that stink started to come up, and now all the shipping companies were like, yo, we're not coming to Russia to pick up your oil. We can't do it. It's just too much smoke behind that. We can't take that, right? So now they got no shipping, unless it's domestic shipping, their own ships, which I don't think they have any. I mean, if they do,
have some, but not
They have
enough.
some.
yeah, if they do, then why aren't we hearing about it, right? So then you got China saying that they'll buy it because they're an ally, right? And of course, China, they're like, sure. I mean, think about how fucked Russia is right now. They're trying to sell oil to one country who always wants a deal, the Chinese, right? They want it at the cheapest price all the time. And they know that they're going to lose their ass. Here is a barrel of oil. I want $100 for it. And the Chinese are like, I'll give you $3.50. And Russia's like, no. It's $100. I'm feeling about $3.50. You know, so that was back and forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if they're really desperate, they're going to take $3.50. But now, not only are they having to deal with the country, they're trying to sell to the country who always wants a deal, but now they're going to end up selling to the country that never wants to give you a deal. I give you best price. Think about that. The ultimate world war is if India, the country who doesn't want to give you a deal, has to go to war with China, the country that never wants or that always wants a discount. That's the real world war. Russia's having to sell to both of them.
No. The real world war is all the robocallers based in India versus all the robocallers versus China.
Jesus.
Ooh.
All right.
That's the real world
But
war.
okay, all joking aside though,
Yeah,
that
I know.
is the problem. Is if you are a country who makes your money selling oil, and you are an emerging global power like India has slowly been becoming in the last like 20 years, they're really accelerating their growth, right? Energy is a big deal for that push, right? It's like their own industrial and socioeconomic revolution, right? That takes a lot of energy. That takes a lot of money. That takes a lot of development and capital. I mean, they're building a modern navy. They're arming up, right? Because they're a power now. They're not to be trifled with, and they're one of the most populated places in the world. So like, they can conscript an infantry the same size as the American population if they had to. Of course they're going to buy the oil. They need it, right? It's like, don't blame me. I need oil, right? That's kind of that's the deal. And of course we're going to chastise them for it. God damn it, you're supposed to be a NATO ally. What the fuck are you doing, right? We need oil. I mean, what's the deal, right? It's like, I need oil. I mean, we need it too, don't we?
NATO, so don't worry about that.
Well, we need it too, but we need it just because we're not drilling our own. We're not shale oiling or fracking our own because,
Which we really should be.
some jackass in the White House is out of his fracking mind. All right, let's move on. This is about the same time, actually, and I think this is the story that you said you liked. So I saw this picture and I thought, what the hell does it all mean? This property has been liberated. And then I found out where it was. 4:00 p.m. Ukrainian time, which I believe is about, let's see, it's 6 hours difference. 2:00 London. Activists on Monday are occupying a London townhouse linked to Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska, declaring that the property will be used to support Ukrainian refugees. The UK government last week froze the assets of Deripaska whom it identified as a prominent pro-Kremlin oligarch who is closely linked to President Vladimir Putin. Now look, sidebar. Anybody they turn the Eye of Sauron on that they say is an oligarch, they will always follow that up with closely linked to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Let's not kid ourselves, right? It gives them a justification. By occupying the mansion, we want to show solidarity with the people of Ukraine, but also the people of Russia who never agreed to this madness. It's like, wait a minute. You never agreed to it, so we're taking your shit. Okay, that makes sense.
It checks out.
Right? Yeah. UK doing UK things, I guess. I don't know.
Well, let's put it this way: you put up with that madman, you get this is your just desserts when the world decides to turn against your entire country. So the only thing those oligarchs have right now is see who in your country can take out Putin first.
There's one guy I feel sorry for. The guy that owned Chelsea United Football Club.
I don't feel sorry for him either.
No. He's not tied to Putin. But to show you that he isn't tied to Putin, he sold his team, and the proceeds went to the Ukraine. It's like the guy was rich enough that he could sell the team and not need the money for it. Think about that. First of all,
Yeah.
Chelsea United Football Club is a multi-billion-dollar empire.
And he didn't sell the team.
I thought he sold his controlling interest of the team.
No, it never went through.
Oh.
Because of the sanctions.
Oh, you mean they just... Well, they didn't take it from him, though.
They didn't take it from him, but nobody will buy it from him either.
Well, that's not good for the team, though, because that means they're
them
stuck.
under sanction.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well, no, because Chelsea United is a British football club. So if he sells it off, they're not beholden to the sanction. The guy who got the money is, but
because
he said he's going to donate.
Buying something from somebody who's sanctioned, you can't pay the person who is sanctioned.
Well, see, that's the thing, though. When he said that he was selling the team, he immediately followed it up with all the proceeds from the sale of this team will go straight to the the Ukraine, which means that probably satisfied the NATO or whoever levies the sanctions. That probably satisfied them because he's not taking a penny. You see what I'm saying? Like, I think the guy's doing a solid. We wanted to sell the team.
He's trying to.
Well, he wanted to sell the team because it wasn't, not because of who he is. He wanted to sell the team so that team, their reputation, wouldn't be sullied by his name. He was like, I'm going to release this before it ruins your reputation. Because, I mean, they're a storied institution. It's just he happens to be the owner at the time, right? So he's letting it go before the reputation of that thing is ruined. Because it's not their fault. He said it's not the athlete's fault.
Already ruined.
Well, he said it's not the team's fault, not the players, not any of that, right? He just owns the team. He's the guy who writes the checks. So he was like, I'm going to walk away from this. I mean, FIFA's or professional soccer it's scummy, but in a different way. Like FIFA, for instance. It's pretty scummy, but in a different way. Anyway, activists were saying that as with wars, empires benefit and common people pay the price. The U.S. government previously sanctioned Deripaska in 2018, saying he helped support Russia's malign activity around the world and listed 5 Belgrade Square in London as one of his addresses. That's the address. So they took it, and then they put that sign out in front. And all those people, I'm sorry. You took it, you liberated it, you're in the safety of the UK. Take off your fucking masks. Be proud of what you've done. Come on. Jesus. Be proud. They're not going to send a Chechen hit squad after you. Anyway, moving on. About an hour later, it's now curfew in Kyiv and most of Ukraine. It's lockdown time. I'm sure there's like a klaxon or something to remind people. Everyone hurries off, probably to flip on their TV or radio and their internet, because, Volodymyr Zelensky's been addressing the people every day. And that's admirable. Like, Something Squibb said the other day kind of irked me, but I had to question it because he might be right. Zelensky always shows up in the public address clean as a whistle. You ever notice that? Now, maybe he just has maybe he respects the people to show that he wants to show his best face. And I can understand that. Sometimes he
I've seen
comes
pictures
in.
of him dirty.
Yeah, that's the thing I did too. But usually when he does his addresses, he's spotless. And then like
No, I've seen him
you've
dirty
seen it after that.
for his
Okay.
addresses.
So
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so there's merit to that. It's just like sometimes you see him with his he's wearing like Under Armour gear, which usually is what you see on somebody before they put their plate carrier over, right? And he's sitting there doing an address in that, and he's like, "Did you ever notice that's never sweaty? It's never dirty. There's never any marks like a plate carrier wrote on it." And I'm just like, he's kind of right. But then again, this is all new gear for him too, so maybe it just hadn't had a chance to wear out,
Well,
Anyway.
honestly, how much sweating is he going to do? He's going to be running around in combat.
Yeah, and he's probably changing them out too. So I mean, I think honestly, he settles in, gets cleaned up, puts on his best face when he can, addresses the people out of respect for his country. I believe
You can
that.
definitely see it on his face.
Yeah, and you can see he's aged 10 years in 20 days. Like the guy's burning the candle at both ends. And I'm going to admit this, and I'm going to admit I was wrong, okay? But a couple of years ago, I sat there and I had a discussion with somebody, and I said, could you imagine how awesome our country would be if a guy like Vladimir Putin was running it? Because, I mean, at the time, he was very commanding, very authoritative for the interests of his country, that is. And he was doing like action man photo ops, bare-chested horseback riding, going into submarines, looking at ship. It's like, I was like, wow, that's what a leader should look like, right? Very involved. Now, I'll admit, I was wrong because the guy's a total dick, right?
Yeah.
But from the
all those photos you're talking about,
they're all
are,
staged.
Like, they're all staged, and they're all from well over a decade ago.
True. So they could just be stock photos, right? But you know what? From the
Yeah.
ashes of my mistake and misinterpretation, something really good came out of it, because now you're looking at a guy like Zelensky and you're like, that's what a leader needs to do. Like he's the Omar Bradley of Ukraine right now, right? He's the no, I'm not kidding. He's the common man. He's like the GI General in a way. He's showing up. He's hanging out with Vitaly Klitschko, the mayor of his capital. Like all of that is noble things. He has not left. He has defied hit squads. He's survived 3 assassination attempts. He's actually done a video where he's like, I'm right here. And then he moves the camera and his fucking apartment's right across the street. Or his office was. The presidential office was, right? He was like, I'm right here and I'm not going nowhere. It's like, man, the set on that guy. You could probably crack a diamond with the set on that guy. Anyway.
I'm sure the Russian cosmonauts can see them from space.
Big, meaty ones.
From space in their detached module.
Yeah. All I'm saying is like...
That's all just a propaganda video.
I'm glad I was wrong about Putin, but I'm so much better glad that... I know that doesn't make sense grammatically. I'm so much better off realizing that that's what a leader should look like. This guy has been stellar. Like if he doesn't get Time Magazine's Man of the Year, then Time Magazine, go fuck yourself. For real.
Oh, he's getting a Nobel Peace Prize. Are you kidding me?
God, man. Maybe. Hopefully. I don't know. All right, let's move on. So we're at curfew now. And, like I was saying, everyone's probably rushing home, getting ready for the address. Well, anyway, I'm going to tell the 2 stories, one after the other in quick succession, because there's something that you need to hear here. And just for continuity's sake, I did update the scroller at the bottom. That is the updated casualty totals. And there's one figure in there that I want you to pay particular attention to. Did you notice the KIA total? It rocketed up to 12,000. And then it just stopped. For like 3 days. It's plateaued. So what's the deal, right? Oh, crap. I just realized I messed up the scroller. Hang on a second. Let me
Well,
fix
I'm pretty sure the
something.
Russians are still taking casualties.
There you go. I got the wrong day on the scroll. It's day 19. I just fixed it. Anyway, the statistics are up to date though. But yeah, that number 12,000, it hasn't really changed. See how I put the approximate right there? It says 12,000 plus because the number has slowed down dramatically. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that the most of the major fronts have stalled in the last couple of days. Like all the ones in the south have stalled, almost all the ones in the northeast have stalled, and then they're still building up battle lines around Kyiv. And I'm starting to think that the reason they're doing that is because they're, remember when I was talking about the convoy sitting in a holding pattern for 10 days? Number one, because they knew nobody would hit it with an airstrike, because that would be a NATO airstrike if it was. And number two, because I think they were waiting up for the rest of the infantry to link up so they can actually envelop Kyiv. Well, they still only have the northwest, north, and northeast. The flank coming in from the south, as you can see in today's map there, it ain't even close. Like, they're nowhere near it. If you actually see right where it says Kyiv with the explosion, there's a little detachment trying to hook around. But the majority is still all up north. And the south is just, I think they've got a complete different campaign. I think their campaign is take Odessa at all costs. They're not pushing northwest. They're just pushing west. Anyway, let's get to the two stories, bang bang, one after the other. Curfew time. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has killed 85 children and wounded more than 100 others. This came from a Ukrainian official, citing Sunday statistics. Casualties come as Russia's deliberate and brutal shelling of civilians continues. Ukraine Prosecutor General Irina Venediktova said that on social media. She said that 369 educational institutions have also been damaged, 57 of which were completely destroyed. Okay, so here's the numbers. 85 killed, 100 wounded children. Okay? Think of the children. That's the theme there. 1 hour later, 6 p.m. Ukrainian time, a tale of two figures. Now the United Nations Human Rights Office releases their statistic of Monday. So it's supposed to be more up to date, right? 636 civilians killed so far, including only 46 children. Almost half of Ukrainians' numbers. And they also updated the refugee count to 2.8 million. That was of Sunday. They haven't even updated for Monday's figures yet. 2.8 million by the end of Sunday, with 1.7 million taking refuge in Poland. So, my overlying theme so far is the winner will always project big numbers, and the loser or the attacked will always water down the numbers because it's a morale game. And I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. 46 children according to the UN, 85 by the Ukrainian officials, let's say 66. Somewhere in the middle. Now, those numbers will obviously change because any building that's collapsed is a tomb. And until the smell starts to set in, you don't know how many kids
and with
are in
how
there.
many hospitals they've
Destroyed.
quote unquote accidentally hit.
Yeah. Well, the two numbers I got from that was by the time the Mariupol maternity center was attacked, that would have been number 19. Or no, sorry, number 18. But then somebody on the ground in the country who surveys damage said it was actually number 29.
Yeah,
But
that's
then
the number
again,
I've been hearing.
take the high, take the low, split the middle. Let's say 22, realistically. But then again, like we said, different story, right? Oh, that reminds me. I didn't put this in as a story, but I did hear this today. Ukrainian ministry is saying that you should not take shelter in your bomb shelters during a missile attack. Now, This is going to fall back on something that I talked about yesterday when I was doing the show solo. And I sort of said, I alluded to the same thing. And I know it sounds weird, right? This is an old city with ancient history behind it, right? And a lot of the buildings keep getting torn down, renovated, or whatever. But some of them buildings are very old, centuries old, right? Their basements are centuries old. They will crumble to the ground and turn into a tomb if struck by a missile and it collapses on itself. That's what their public service announcement was. If you're in an older building, do not take shelter in your basement because it will become your tomb. And I made that very clear yesterday during the show. I was like, that makes sense. But that's also probably where they're going to be finding the bodies. That's also where the real death toll numbers will roll in. Because if you see a building come down, you see a building come down. 4 days later, you might start to smell something, and you're like, shit, we need to dig that out and find how many people are in there, because there might still be someone alive. That's when the numbers really come in. That's going to be graphic, and that's going to be gross. Moving right along. I had a friend who, he was in construction, and during the earthquake, the California earthquake that happened during the World Series, so I think that was what, the late 80s or early 90s, something like that. Does that ring a bell, Mr. Knives? You're in the chat. Do you remember what year that was? I'll wait for you to put that in there, but I remember him telling me a story of when the double-decker highway collapsed and like the top level crushed down on the bottom level. Well, he was part of the construction crew that had to clear that out, and he was like, the smell was unbearable after 5 days. And that's kind of the same thing that you would see if you find a missile struck building in Ukraine, you know? It's all collapsed in on itself and you got to dig somebody out. Well, if you don't know that they're in there, maybe you think maybe it was unoccupied. And a couple days later you're like, oh man, somebody was in there. Was in there. We got to check to see if there's anybody else in there. It's pretty terrible. But then again, you always heard me say humanity's garbage. So wars make you see the best and worst in humanity. Unfortunately, it's more worse than best. Moving right along. I'm trying really, you want to say 92. I'm kind of thinking the same line, Fine Ape. It was really early on. I remember that. It even damaged the stadium. Northridge earthquake, January 94. There you go. Thank you. See, he nailed it. I knew, ask a local, you're definitely going to get the right answer. Appreciate that. All right, so moving along, about 2 minutes later, Volodymyr Zelensky speaks. Surprise, surprise, right? Well, he announces that he will be delivering a speech to Congress, the U.S. Congress, that is, through a virtual meeting on Wednesday morning. He's going to be talking to Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. They both said that in a joint statement, so they were very happy to receive the request, and they're going to answer it. The Congress and our country and the world are in awe of the people of Ukraine, who have shown extraordinary courage, resilience, and determination in the face of Russia's unprovoked, vicious, and illegal war. That's what the joint statement said. As war rages on in Ukraine, it is with great respect and admiration for the Ukrainian people that we invite all members of the House and Senate to attend a virtual address to the United States Congress delivered by Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine on Wednesday, March 16th at 9 a.m. I will tell you that if you want to see this, it is highly likely that streaming news sites will be broadcasting this. Maybe C-SPAN, maybe Fox News. Chances are they'll be broadcasting this. And you'll get to hear it with the Ukrainian translator talking it out in the background. And I suspect, like, we should do an over-under. So your homework assignment, you in the audience and you in the panel, let's play the congressional address drinking game. Think of a phrase that you know you're going to hear on Wednesday's address. Like, we're not actually going to drink. I'm just saying, think of a phrase during his address that you're almost guaranteed to hear. And I'm pretty sure it'll probably fall on deaf ears because it's Congress. There's too much shit between their ears to actually get anything absorbed into them. Especially when he says, "Clear my skies. I keep asking you. Stop ignoring me." That's my drinking game selection. It's going to be about the no-fly zone. I promise you. That's my choice.
But where are the planes?
Yeah, that's a good one too. All right, wait. I'm going to start taking... If you're going to start giving me your selections now, I'm going to write them down right now.
Write them down.
Mine is no-fly zone again. And then Scott's is... Where's my planes? And then, okay, if any of you else in the chat or here in the panel, so you too, Deagle, if you have a selection, you too, Mike, if you have a selection, I'll write it down and I'll save it, and then we'll compare it tomorrow, or, sorry, Wednesday. And we'll see.
All I could think of was the no-fly zone.
Okay,
Sean,
that's fine.
Sean, yours is more helmets, please.
No. No.
You know what? I'll take the javelins.
Oh, okay.
More javelins.
Okay, no, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Do you want to specify it to javelins or just anti-aircraft?
Just whatever.
Okay.
Let's make it multiple choice.
Okay, so like javelins and stingers.
Yep, javelins, stingers,
and then probably S300s too.
Stangers.
Yeah, stangers.
Yeah, stangers.
All right, and then knives is like send ammo. Okay, that's fair.
Especially,
knives could be in here.
Yeah, he could be in here telling us that. He could be a panelist here.
He could be. He just doesn't like Discord.
Oh, okay. Fine Apes is good too.
Uh-oh.
That is not enough. Yeah.
That's not enough.
Actually, that is not enough. You know what? I've heard him say that several times, and I think you're spot on.
There we go.
All right, cool. So I've got 5 entries so far. If any of you guys see this on the replay later and you want to play this, it's not really a game, but if you want to jump in on this interactive part of the show, then my email address is at the bottom in the description. Yes, it does say Les Grossman, if you know who that is. Just use that address, email me, just say your username in YouTube, and then what your one line is going to be.
Oh, Sean, I know what we can call it. Instead of a Deadpool, Zelensky pool.
The shooting Putin pool. Think of the children.
Think of the children. There we go.
Oh my God. Okay. No. That's fair too. Okay, I'll put that in there. Think of the children.
There we go. Yeah,
the last time I heard that was
last week.
No, it was. I think it was Ned Flanders' wife on The Simpsons. Why won't anybody think of the children? Sorry, I know it's a cartoon, but still. All right, that's perfect. All right, yeah. So we'll play that. We'll play that sort of drinking and Chuck Norris. He's like 90 years old, dude. Anyway, no,
it's Chuck Norris.
It's time. Dude. It's time for Chuck Norris to go the way of just riding off in the sunset. Let him relax his last couple of years.
Oh, come on.
All right, he can. Hey, you know what? I got it. We'll send Chuck Norris to that bombed out NATO facility, and just when he shows up, it'll just repair itself like Christine, and then he'll train the Ukrainians on guerrilla warfare. He'll go full fucking Braddock.
I was gonna say, can we parachute John Rambo into the Urals?
No, but I'll tell you who we can do. I'll tell you who we can do. We will airdrop Xander Cage.
Oh yeah,
with a snowboard on his feet. Oh, wait.
He might be able to take out Putin.
Well, okay, so this is what we'll do. We will airdrop Joe Biden's Corvette as a lawn dart and just, use that to mark the landing right there, and then drop Xander Cage with a snowboard, and he'll land on top of the vet and then ski down or snowboard down, and he'll be like, "I love fresh powder." Jesus Christ. Man, welcome to the Xander Zone. Don't be a dick.
Speaking of that, did you
Yeah.
see the article of Ramstein that I messaged you the other day? It was a private message on Discord.
I can't even remember what I did yesterday, but I'm sure I saw it because I responded. Send John Wick. He can speak Russian.
Yes, he
Wait,
can.
Zoro pops out and then he comes back in the chat. WTF? Anyway,
Yeah.
whatever. The only excuse I'll accept
It's not
is,
like he was saying anything.
In
well,
class.
I'll accept the excuse if his singer girlfriend called, then that takes precedence. Because she seems very cute and very awesome. So, anyway, let's move on. It is now an hour later. It's 7:02 Ukrainian time. And it says that a growing and bipartisan group in Congress is pressuring President Biden to facilitate the transfer of Poland's MiG-29 fighter jets to Ukraine amid Russia's brutal invasion, despite statements by the U.S. military that such a move would be high risk, low reward. Now, here's the important part of this, okay? The people vote for your Congress, and Congress gets to tell the military, sort of, what to do, right? Acts of Congress to declare war and whatnot, right? So when your Congress is saying shut up and send the planes, they're respectfully taking the advice of their military leaders, but they're saying, listen, I represent the people. The people want you to facilitate the deal for the planes, so you do the will of the people. And, I can already hear his voice in my head, but I would hear, people are stupid. They don't understand the implications of that and how that will escalate the war. And I think that's a fair argument to be made, but I'm going to quote Crimson Tide. We ain't got time to fuck around. Okay? We've let this gone on long enough. The conscripts are gaining experience. They're getting better at what they're doing. And if they get better, they will be more efficient, which means they will take more ground quickly. They will commit more atrocities on the regular. Like, there's no time for this anymore. Like, this country has been asking for its help, for NATO's help, because it wanted to be part of NATO. And NATO promised them back in 2014, hey, disarm all your nukes. If anything happens, we'll be there for you. And right now, they're not, are they? I mean, they're sending material. That is valuable, but they need more, like Fine Ape said, but it's not enough. This whole thing would have never happened, I think, if they fast-tracked NATO Ukraine.
This whole thing wouldn't have happened if Obama hadn't let them annex fucking Crimea back in 2014.
That was a bad look. Like, that is undeniable. But, okay, I have a theory, and you might not like it, but I'm going to stick by my guns on this one. And you can call me wrong or an idiot or whatever, or you can say I don't know shit about war, because you would be partially correct. But I am a student of history, and I do see history repeating itself in a lot of cases, okay? I could place the blame of this on two people, and it's not Putin. And it's what I'm ashamed of is one of them is one of my guys. You could technically lay the blame of this, I can't believe I'm about to say this, on Rand Paul and Ted Cruz. Those two have been vehemently against Ukraine being entered into NATO. And it's my belief that if Ukraine was admitted into NATO before any of this shit started, Russia would have thought twice about invading it and instantly violating Article 5. But like Nightstrike just said, the groundwork of undermining that process all began with Obama conceding Crimea. You're right. You're absolutely right. That was the beginning of the end. I mean, look at the timeline of this. This all happened in 2014, right? Ukraine wants to be part of NATO. NATO turns around and says, disarm your nuclear weapons. If you need us, give us a call. We're there for you. We're your bros. Ukraine, trying to do a symbol or a token of good faith to show them I'm serious, I really want to join, I will do this for you, disarmed, didn't they?
Yeah.
The same fucking year, the President of the United States does nothing about the Russian annexation of Crimea.
Also think of this: the uh, the the foreign ministers here in the United States for Ukraine, diplomats and whatnot, have been gone on record on national television stating that getting rid of their nuclear weapons, in hindsight, was probably a bad idea.
It was the biggest mistake they made because they basically lost their
That was
trump
the
card.
biggest bargaining chip.
That was
Honestly,
their trump card.
And if Squibb is right saying they couldn't afford to take care of all of them, okay, sure, you can't have like thousands of them, but I think they
could have downsized
they had enough.
it.
They could have downsized and had enough to have 1 to 3 at most.
We don't know how many you need to have to be a threat. Technically, you only need one, right?
You only need one.
Yep.
Here's the thing, though. If they did it, what they could have negotiated is we'll reduce by 75%. We can maintain 25% with the assistance of NATO and the IAEA. Or I don't know if the IAEA has anything to do with nuclear weapons, but something like them, right?
No.
Where they can monitor and maybe give you a hand. I don't know. That part I will admit to being ignorant to. But all I'm saying is they could have negotiated a better deal and they didn't. And instead, they lost Crimea. And then I just don't understand why Rand Paul would say no to NATO.
Because he's an isolationist.
Well,
He
I know.
is a true libertarian who doesn't think we should be fucking around the world.
Right, but that's the thing, you see, if they did let Ukraine join NATO, right? You can still not participate in that particular NATO exercise. You see it all the time. It's like there's some conflict around the world, and then everyone chips in a number of forces, and it's like the U.S. takes the lead and puts in like 30,000 troops, and then Italy's like, we'll send you 10. We're still part of NATO, we'll send you 10. That kind of nonsense, right? Well, we could be that for once. So he could be isolationist while still being a NATO ally. But the thing that blew my mind was Ted Cruz is not an isolationist, and even he was opposed to it. And I think his reason for being opposed was because we don't want to escalate tensions with, you know what, we're not the escalators of these tensions. Vladimir Putin has been the escalator of all these tensions for the last 19 days and the months of the buildup before it.
Is he specifically your senator, or is he just a senator?
He's my senator, because Texas has 2 senators.
Well, you should really call him and give him a piece of your mind.
Listen,
Well,
I've
here's the
already
bigger
done
thing.
that. I have done that. And I get to meet my congressman who used to be my county judge, and he's going to get a piece of my mind too. Because he's also the guy that signed my CNR license.
Ha!
So I do get to
here's
talk
the
to him.
thing. Did NATO force any of those countries to join NATO?
No, it's always done by
Or
request.
did they willingly ask to join NATO? And then the further question is, why did they ask to join NATO? Maybe they're worried about a certain country on their eastern border.
Typically,
invading them?
countries apply to be part of NATO, and the process takes upwards of 10 years. NATO says, okay, you're an applicant. You have to meet certain guidelines. It's either like geopolitical guidelines. You have to have like financial guidelines.
Common
you have to have
military,
armament guidelines.
hardware,
Yeah, all sorts of stuff like that. So like they would put all those things in there, and then if you had to meet the guide or the intervals on a certain, or you had to meet the guidelines at a certain interval, and then after you jump through enough hoops, they're like, okay, welcome to NATO.
The easiest question is, though, why would those countries want to join NATO?
For the protections of Article 5.
Exactly.
It's like falling under a blanket. It's like NATO is trying to be a global version of the United States, essentially. You want to be a state, this is how you do it, right? And at the end of the day, the theory of it is good, but the admittance program is atrocious. Because if you, in the event of this situation, right? the Ukraine could have been fast-tracked in. We could have been like, look, no, they did everything we asked them to back in 2014, and they're under imminent threat of destruction. We can save them if we just give them the protections of Article 5, putting them in there, because that will force Russia to think twice about pushing in. Because if I mean, think about it like this. If he pushed into this country like it is right now, and he's having this much of a hard time, do you think he would have even attempted this with 30 nations worth of NATO countries helping them? I don't think so. Or he would have been extremely more brash and used tactical nukes right from the start. Maybe. But I don't think he wants to destroy that country because like you said before, he wanted the warm water ports before when he got Crimea, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, imagine if he finishes this campaign. Imagine if he makes a phone call and gets Moldova with a phone call, because I talked about this last night too. He gets Moldova on a phone call just because he's like, listen, you guys are poor and we're taking over and you can't stop us. And Moldova's like, whatever, just don't knock over the fine China. That's all we've got left, right? They would probably capitulate just because they don't want to damage their country, what little of it they have. And then they push into the Baltic states, which are NATO allies, but they'll push into the Baltic states because they're emboldened by all their gains. They'll take that risk. And if they somehow succeed in all of that, they'll still leave Poland alone. I think they will not touch Poland. They don't want that ass kicking, right? But who's to say they don't, like, okay, they could take Georgia again. And what's funny is Jack Keane mentioned that this morning. He was like, Georgia's a 50-50 country. I'm like, gee, he must be listening to my podcast from 3 days ago. I said the exact same thing. They're half separatist, half revolutionary. They're pushing for more sanctions against Russia. And the separatists are like, what are you guys doing? They're going to kill us if you keep pushing this. Russia could just move in and take Georgia over too. Once they got that, what's the next one on the map? Turkey. If you want a warm water port outside of the Black Sea, and you somehow take Turkey with the help of Syria and Iran down there, think about that. Now you have a warm water port that faces the Med. Isn't that a lot more lucrative than just the Black Sea? Like, think about how quickly that itchy blanket grows then. I did this whole social exercise with Jaime.
I don't think Iran and Syria could take Turkey. I'm sorry.
No, they would help to take Turkey. I'm not saying they would do it alone. God, no.
I don't think they would even be that much of a help. They'd be more of a hindrance.
Dirty bombs and terrorist attacks, man. I don't know.
Here's the thing. Turkey is a NATO member.
Right, yeah. But like that was saying, like when they go up to the Baltic states, they will go after those too, knowing they're NATO members.
They're next on the Baltic states are next on the menu.
Right, but see, that's the thing. By the time they go up to the Baltic states, they'll be so emboldened by all their other gains down here that they don't care that they're attacking NATO countries. You see what I'm saying? So going after Turkey, another NATO nation, is no big deal to them if they went that far.
But you also have to realize that Turkey is right next to one other country. It's like literally borders it. You know Lebanon? What that country is? No, Greece.
No. Not really. There's
no. I'm not saying Greece is a military power.
No,
I'm saying
I know. I would tell you that if they took over
Greece
Turkey,
got attacked, they would invoke Article 5. Period.
I know, but the point is like this was just a big game of risk and a social exercise. First of all, so take it for a grain of salt. But if they manage to take Turkey, right? They have a warm water port to the Med now. They would crush Greece in no time flat.
And they can shut off.
Well.
Because the fact of the matter is Greece can't afford war right now. They're poor as shit too. Think about how many times they got bailed out by Germany.
Greece doesn't have a military of any size to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, just think about how many times they got bailed out by Germany. Like they don't have the stomach for it.
I'm not saying that they have a military. They have any sort of military. I'm saying that if attacked, they would invoke Article 5 just so they get help to fight off.
Well, any NATO country that is attacked will invoke Article 5.
Yeah,
right.
That's a given.
It's just the fact of the matter is if they get up to the Balkans, they don't care. That's all I'm saying. And if they succeed somehow with that, then Turkey's not out of the realm of possibility. Like they're like, hey, we did it up here. Let's try it down here.
And I'm telling you, if Ukrainians start fighting on the Polish border, with Russian forces, and Russian forces start shooting into Poland and start hitting targets.
That's why I'm saying I don't think they ever attack Poland. That's my point. Like, they would take the Balkans, they would take Turkey, they would envelop Poland from the north and the south. But that's the other thing, you see. Once they took the Balkans, I don't think they would dare try to take Finland or any of the Scandinavian states. There's no way. They don't want that smoke. They can't handle it.
Well, I know they won't attack Finland again.
No, it really is knives. I'm not kidding. That's where it is. I know that.
Yeah.
Well, you're not noticing the historical
It's 2 C's, not
Parallels?
1 K, by the way. Huh?
This is reminding me significantly of the lead up to World War II,
Well,
where Hitler, I want this state. Well, now I'm
this
going to invade this country.
Oh, and you're saying like the first couple of states sort of like Neville Chamberlain and just sort of like,
Yes.
okay, just don't break the dishes or whatever.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think that's part of why we can't let them take
Well,
Ukraine.
yes.
Okay, so if the Russians get Ukraine, then they get Moldova. Okay, they're
That's
going
a
to go.
given.
And they're going to go
That's a
after
given.
Latvia.
Then they're going to go after Estonia, Latvia,
all
and
of them.
Lithuania.
You're
they're going all
repeating
three.
what I said. They're taking the Baltic states. That's what
Yeah.
those are.
Yes, they'll go after them, but I don't think they'll push further into Europe because I don't think
They won't. That's what I'm telling you. They won't. Number one,
honestly,
they can't take Poland. They can't. They just can't
They can't
handle it
take Poland.
militarily.
They can't handle it.
The really,
Because it'll be
really-
the same fight as the Ukraine.
no, it's worse.
No, it'll be worse.
The really funny thing about Poland, look at their tank arsenal. They have almost
They have
every
the biggest
they have almost
tank
every
arsenal
NATO
in
tank
Europe.
available in their arsenal, which means they know the
And a
weaknesses.
bunch of Russian shit.
Yeah, which
and
means they know the
also-
weaknesses of every one of those tanks, so they know how to fight every one of those tanks.
And I don't care who is helping the Russians. They can't take Turkey. I'm sorry, but I think Turkey could probably whoop them. Period.
There's a couple of spots in Turkey that most people won't go step foot in. You're right. You're right. But by the time, if now remember, we're just playing risk out loud, okay?
Yes.
If they did it, you've got them plus his Chechnys plus his Belarusians plus his Ukrainian separatists plus any Moldovans that want a job, right? You got all that going on. Plus, he might even, I don't know, convert some of the militaries of the Balkan states if he gets them somehow diplomatically without destroying them all, right?
Right.
You work for me now, that kind of a thing, right? So he's
Well-
got all that. We don't know what
But-
China's doing yet. We don't know what India's doing yet. We
No.
do know what Iraq or Iran is doing already, and we know that he's already conscripted Syrians. It's
I want to
not.
know why Tehran
unbelievable.
hasn't been bombed back to the Stone Age.
What's that?
Yeah.
I want
I
to
think-
know why Tehran has not been bombed back to the Stone Age.
You know,
Because Biden has the
don't
balls.
know. I don't know. Because the fact of the matter is, if they really don't have a nuclear weapon, now would be the time to do that. However,
Even if they do, they might
however,
have one.
was the only reason nobody's attacked Iran because they're still under some sort of Soviet protection? Because if they are, they're not now because Russia's too tied up in this shit.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, okay,
But-
enough.
And let's face it, the
but
Israelis
hold on,
have
one more
proven
thing.
that F-35 is entirely capable of reaching Tehran.
One more thing.
Mhm.
If they get the Baltic states, if they get Ukraine and Belarus and Moldova, you are right. They may bypass Poland, but that's not to say they wouldn't try and get back to Yugoslavia or
Oh no, that would take
Or-
time. You're right. You're right. They
Czech-
Oh,
would,
that
they would
Czech- or
slowly
Czech don't wanna
bleed
go
that
there.
Czech and
out.
Slovakia.
They would slowly bleed into there, but they won't attack Poland.
Yeah.
They're going to take everything above it and everything below it. They're going to encircle it. And if
I
they get
think they
all
would
of them to
rather
fly
be,
under the red flag, then they can look at Poland and go, "Are you sure you don't want to reconsider your options now?" But I mean, that's like, let's be real. That whole thing, that's like a 5 to 10 year plan. Putin will be dead in 2. If we know physiology of the average Russian male, he'll be dead in 2. Maybe even sooner. Like, there was that theory that maybe he's got some sort of lymphatic cancer because of the way his face is all swollen these days, and he's becoming slightly unhinged, probably because he's desperate for quick results. I'm telling you, this whole war is one man's dying wish. I want to redraw the map of 1961. I'm telling you. Now, if he dies in the process, then maybe he won't get to see it through. Or if he gets defeated here, maybe he won't get to see it through. I hope somebody just offs him from his own. He's got those 2 generals. They're 30 feet away. Don't tell me you can't pull out a pistol and hit a target at 30 feet. They probably disarm
Don't tell me
them.
they're patting those generals down either.
No, I think they are. Knowing how paranoid Putin is about germs and the internet and shit, those guys are disarmed. And they probably pass through 6 checkpoints before they get to sit at that table, to be real. But if they're not, then prove to me that you can hit a target at 30 feet and just fucking off that guy already. And then go break Navalny out and let him fucking save his people before we sanction the entire country of Russia to death. I mean, come on, think about it. Anybody born after 1999, right? Which I hate to admit that because, I mean, I'm just old as shit now, aren't I?
I remember 1999.
I'll give you a better one.
Don't
Anyone
talk about
born
that.
after 2001, okay? Because I walked into a grocery store today and it said, "Are you sure you're 21 for this beer? You have to be born after March 14th, 2001." I was like, son of a bitch. I was fucking 21 years old by then. Like, God damn it, right? Anyone born after 2001 in Russia, they never knew communism. They never knew socialism. They've only known the free world because communism fell, right? Supposedly. But let's be honest. A guy was arrested as a protester who I told this story yesterday. He handcuffed himself to the first McDonald's that was open in Moscow in 1990. He did it as a symbolic gesture, and he said that as much. I picked this because this is all I've ever known. That's what he said. That's what everybody in Russia born after 2001 is saying. That generation is obviously outnumbering Putin's generation, right? Throughout history, every generation multiplies bigger than the generation before it, unless a world war wiped them all out, which, well, the way things are going. Anyway, that's my point. That's enough with
Well,
Risk.
here's a thought.
What? I'm trying to get this over within 2 hours.
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
was
Go ahead.
thinking there is precedent in Russia for the military
To coup?
launching coups
Yes. Well,
because they did that to
Kolchak?
no, Boris Yeltsin.
Oh, that's a good point. I'm
Because
I'm
there
glad
is
you brought up a
video
more
of
modern
tanks
example.
firing on the Duma. The thing was, the military didn't have the backing of the people.
No. This is why he's the finest of apes. He's gonna pull a Zorg and choke on a cherry. Oh man, isn't
But
it
there'll be
funny
no priest to take the
how your
cherry
I'm
whole
gonna have to look and see
dynasty,
what he
all
said.
your weapons, all your hate, can all come crashing down over one little cherry? You spared my life. Or wait, you saved my life. So I'll spare yours. For now. Give me the stones. God damn it. That was brilliant. Thank you, Fine 8.
That's a great movie.
All right, so let's move on. I've only got like a couple of stories left for you.
Just don't press that button.
So anyway, yeah. You know what I like? A Born in the Rough killer. No, don't get me started on that, because that's like a modern
let's
Full
go.
Metal Jacket. I just one perfect string of quotes.
Yep,
All right,
let's
so
go.
a growing and bipartisan group in Congress is pushing for President Biden to facilitate the transfer of Polish MiG-29 fighter jets to Ukraine amidst Russia's brutal invasion. So I already told you all this. The White House is leaning on that position from the military in its opposition to providing the jets, including that Ukraine does not really need the aircraft. Okay, sidebar again. They have 58 or 59 MiG-29s, okay? If you give them... this is a Jeff Goldblum moment. They have 58 or 59 aircraft. If you give them 28 more, then look at that. You've just increased their combat effectiveness by 33%. But you're saying that's escalatory. Of course it's fucking escalatory. Think about it. You've just increased their military combat capability 33%. Or, and I think I talked about this yesterday, you can start to rotate your aircraft for maintenance because they're running 10 to 20 sorties a day. Now, it might not be the same pilot flying the same plane 20 times a day, but if they were, the pilot's tired and the plane is getting really tired, right? So even if you bring in 28 more, you can rotate your aircraft for maintenance. That would make it effective. Ask anybody who's in aviation maintenance in the military, like Squibb, right? Even I think he would tell you, yeah, you need to take the planes down every once in a while and give them a service. Otherwise, you're going to start cannibalizing one to fix another one, right? We've heard that story a million times in 5 different wars. So, of course, it's going to be high risk, but it's also going to be of major benefit to the Air Force. Anyway, Biden already ceded to pressure from Congress to take a tougher stance against Russia multiple times since the war started.
More sanctions.
Yeah. Well, dozens more members from both parties Sunday called on the president to help Ukraine get its hands on the Polish fighter jets that President Volodymyr Zelensky is petitioning for. We, the 58 members of the Problem Solvers Caucus, it's half and half. It's a perfect split of Republicans and Democrats. Urged continued U.S. commitment to the sovereignty of Ukraine and the freedom of the Ukrainian people in the face of Russia's ongoing invasion. The moderate bipartisan House of the Problem Solvers Caucus said Sunday, "We strongly believe that the U.S. must provide additional defense material to Ukrainians protecting their nation." The PSC went on to call Biden to help give Ukrainians more Stinger missiles, drones, and Soviet-era MiG-29 fighter jets that Poland is offering to send Ukraine. Now, I want to talk about something here based off of that statement. To give those planes to Ukraine, Poland has to give up theirs. So we're going to do something called backfill. You've heard me say that phrase a lot since this all began. Now the media is starting to use it. Now, I'm not saying that they're watching my shit, because I'm just a little guy on a little channel on YouTube, right? But the phrase has been heard, and now they're using it. And coincidentally, it's something that I've been using too, which means I'm not saying I came up with it. I'm saying that smart people just had a great case of simultaneous invention. Like, I always say I'm not the only one who's thinking this, and I'm going to say it here. I'm not the only one thinking about the word backfill when it came to this deal. Well, on top of that, there's 4 nations, I think, 4 or 5 NATO nations that use MiG-29s, right? So if we wanted to backfill Poland, we would have to sell them. They're willing to buy them, first of all. We'd have to sell them F-16s, which aren't necessarily mass-produced anymore. I think I had Patrick look this up, and he told me that the South Carolina plant that makes F-16s, that's like the export manufacturing center for F-16s.
Yeah, Greenville.
Yeah. So they make them to send them out to other countries, allies. And I think he said that they average 12 a year, which means they only make 1 a month, which is awful, right? But in a wartime situation, you can Operation Warp Speed this, right? And I thought about this.
Situation, they could probably make 3 or 4 in a month.
No. So hear me out. I had an idea, as I always do.
Uh-oh.
No, this is a good one. I think you're
Sean's got ideas, people. Run.
You're going to love this.
I'm not so sure.
In the Second World War, we needed to build war material at a pace never seen before. And that's the actual beginning of Operation Warp Speed as we know it today. Because there was a man named Henry J. Kaiser. And some of you may know who that is. He owned his own car plant. He also I think he made one of the first. I'm not gonna say he made the first, but he made one of the first air conditioning systems. The guy was Elon Musk of the 1940s. Really, like his conglomeration and desire to innovate is well known in the annals of history. Anyway, the point is, a guy like Henry J. Kaiser figured out a way to produce Liberty ships at a breakneck speed. And he was making these things, what was it, to the tune of like one a month or something? Liberty ships are big, right? And then you got that plant, I think in Dallas, Ford plant, or is it Dearborn? No, Dearborn, I think it was. They were producing like a B-24 every hour, something like that. Was it every hour or every day? Anyway, the point
Every hour.
is every hour, right? The point is you can mass produce these things in a wartime manufacturing situation. South Carolina is where they, but we can't even build Ford trucks. That's chip shortage, sir. Anyway, in a wartime situation, the plant in Greenville can build the F-16. If you sped them up, they can just say, well, we don't have the manufacturing capabilities because it's a small facility, right? Well, guess who else is in South Carolina?
Boeing.
BMW.
BMW, yes.
That's where they build the X5 and the X3, and I think the X1 as well, and probably now the X7. My point is, in a wartime situation, we can get that plant to build F-16s. Simple, right?
Actually, here in Charleston, they closed it down, but there's an old aerospace plant that they used to make rockets for the what you call it for NASA.
Okay,
Which
but I mean, my point is this is the point where in Pearl Harbor, John Voight would stand up when he had no use of his legs, and he said, "Don't tell me what can't be done." Because if we had to build F-16s to backfill 5 NATO nations so they can give up all their MiG-29s, we could do it. We have the capability. Now, yes, there's tool up time and all that, and then they would have to send the Greenville folks to each plant to sort of oversee how to do it. Fair enough. There's going to be a lag, but at least it would be in process, right? So it's backfill in potentia. That's my plan. Like, if we had to backfill, so, okay, Poland has 28 of them, right? What does, like, Estonia have? What does Lithuania have? What do all the other NATO nations that have MiG-29s have? If you make the same deal to every NATO nation, you can finally get, instead of 58 or 59 MiG-29s in Ukraine, they can have 200. Now...
Well, you also have to realize that, Sean, that can they actually man all 200 of them? That's the problem.
Yes. 200 people in a country of 40 million. I'm sure they have 200 pilots. They must have. Reserves, reservists, Air Force Reserve, stuff like that, right? They've got them. Hell, by the time it becomes a global conflict anyway, they'll just... Poland would just send their guys in the planes and their service crews if it came down to it. But if it doesn't, and we're just giving them the planes, right? You give them the planes. That's how you do it. And you're like, okay, well, you give them your MiGs, we'll sell you F-16s. Because at the end of the day, think about how the United States looks. We come out on top because not only did we save Ukraine by brokering the deal, right? But we also made billions by backfilling all the NATO nations and selling them the standard aircraft of NATO. Think about that. It's like we just basically converted all these countries who were carrying Makarovs, and we all sold them Glock 19s in a way, right? And that's what you want in a NATO conglomerate, is we all fly under the same banner, we all fly the same fighter jet. And the United States gets to sell all those nations those fighter jets, which means jobs, which means more factories, which means more money in everyone's pocket in this country to help stymie inflation. because of Joe's stupid Green New Deal bullshit. That's me taking my point and sharpening it and stabbing somebody with it.
Can I interject?
Yes, by all means.
A logistics guy here.
Yes.
We can't get chips to build pickup trucks. GE and Raytheon make all the avionics and all the stuff for the fighter jets.
Yes.
They import all their stuff from China, at least the chipsets and everything.
Yes.
It might be it'd be faster and easier just to get the planes out of Davis Moss.
Well, okay. So, a little background on the chip manufacturing capabilities of China. All the tooling necessary to do that is made in the United States and sold to China. Then they turn around and take that tooling and sell us the chips back, right?
Yep.
We have the capability of taking our own tooling and making our own chips. But
we haven't yet.
Well, in a pinch, we can lean on our NATO ally. Because one manufacturer that hasn't really been affected, most of these manufacturers that really haven't been affected by the chip shortage, BMW. You know why? Because they use Bosch chips. You know where Bosch chips are made? Germany. So we'll just lean on them. Now, I'm not saying that's the only place they're made. I'm not saying it's the only place they're made. But the fact of the matter is I'm talking about in a wartime environment, right?
Sean,
So it's Operation Warp Speed. The government writes blank checks and says, make it happen.
Sean,
Yes,
there's also a Bosch
what?
factory here in South Carolina.
A what?
There's a Bosch factory here in South Carolina.
Are they making chips or are they making electronics? Like with the chips?
They make a bit of everything right now.
Okay. I'm just, all I'm saying is like, if you talk about a wartime environment, there's typically always a recession that follows a war. It's because the government writes a bunch of blank checks. And it's like, don't care what it costs, get it done. Right? Because they need it. So, I mean, again, we're sort of playing Risk again. But that's somebody in the Pentagon's doing the same thing right now. They've got to be. You gotta hope somebody is thinking about this shit. They have a situation room for this, right? They sit down and go, look, what if this happens, then this? If this, then this. They have a whole room of, like, eggheads doing that. I would hope. If not, send me a check.
You wish.
Yeah. I'm just an ideas guy. I'm serious. All right, let's move on.
How many more we got?
Shit. I don't know. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. But we'll get to these quickly. I promise I'll try not to interject too many things into these. All right. So, do I have a picture? No. I mean, did you notice I don't have a lot of pictures tonight? All right. So, 7 p.m. Ukrainian local time. Add another to the list. Estonia's parliament, NATO ally, Baltic states, on Monday is calling for the creation of a no-fly zone in Ukraine as Russian attacks throughout the country. They're the first NATO nation on the record to do so. Oh boy, I didn't even pronounce this. The Rigi Kogu asks the UN member states to take immediate steps to establish a no-fly zone in order to prevent massive civilian casualties in Ukraine. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, when asked earlier for the United Nations stance regarding the implementation of a no-fly zone, said, "It is a matter that, as you know, has been analyzed by a number of countries that considered that possibility as a risk of escalation that could create global conflict. It is based on that analysis that I think we need to be prudent, even if I understand the dramatic appeal of the Ukrainian government." Meaning, we hear you, but our hands are tied, right? That's what he's saying? Something to that effect? Anyway, moving on. Let's see, about an hour. Most of my updates came every hour today instead of every 5 seconds, which they usually do, right? Okay, night, Ape. Okay, so 12:05 is now 8:05 Ukrainian time, and it says a senior U.S. defense official said Monday that almost all of the Russian military's advances in the Ukraine remain stalled. As it stands, Russian troops are about 9 miles outside of the Ukraine's capital city of Kyiv, and it is believed that they're trying to create a defensive line from the cities of Kharkiv to Mariupol. Okay, if you look at that map, right? Kyiv to Kharkiv is a couple hundred miles. Kharkiv to Mariupol, again, is a couple hundred miles. They're creating a defensive line against what? They were the advancing army. Ah, Scott had to crash. Yeah, it's almost midnight, isn't it? All right, yep, let me get through these quickly then. All right, so I'm sorry about the late start, guys. It ran a little long. All right, so anyway, they're saying, analysts are looking at this and they're going, yeah, it looks pretty stalled, right? I tend to disagree. So far, every time the advances have stopped, it's always come ahead of a massive offensive or resupply or something of that nature. This should be no different. I think they're going to make one big swallowing push. But it's just what they do, right? Let's see. Okay, so this time 2 hours went by, and I have a picture of this guy finally. Oh, Knives is out too. Okay. All right, so the next one is... Where did I put it? Oh, it's called Antonio. This guy. He was the one from the last story, too. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres didn't rule out the possibility of nuclear war. Nuclear war as Russia continues its invasion of Ukraine, warning that the bone-chilling development was still a possibility. Raising the alert level of Russian nuclear forces is a bone-chilling development. The prospect of nuclear conflict, once unthinkable, is now back within the realm of possibility. Guterres called for a diplomatic solution to the conflict in Ukraine before the possibility of nuclear war continues to escalate. Somebody needs to inform this guy that you can't negotiate with a madman. This whole war is one man's choice, and he doesn't want to hear it. So you can only speak to him in the language he understands. Strength. That's all he understands. Look at the last president. Russia didn't move in on anything during the Trump presidency. There was a reason for that. There's a reason why they're attacking now. Because a crippled old buffoon is in the White House. So much so, I know I didn't mention this earlier, so much so that his debacle of sending Vice President knee pads on a I'm just going to state the obvious tour, that failed so badly that now they're planning to send him. What more is he going to do? Is he going to just show up to Romania and Poland and go, come on, man? Like, do you think anyone's going to take this guy seriously? No.
I don't, because he says stuff like this.
The American people don't even take this jackass seriously.
All men and women created by go. You know the thing.
The thing.
The thing.
Perfect timing, by the way.
Hmm.
We didn't practice that. That was perfect, though.
That's perfect.
All right, so moving on. We're almost done.
Moving on. We're almost done.
Hour later. Oh yeah, this is the bad one. Okay, so here's his face. You may have seen him before. His name is Benjamin Hall. He's called Benji on Fox News in the middle of the day. He's like their war correspondent. They also have a guy named Trey Yingst. Well, around 3 o'clock my time, 3:10 Central Time, 4:10 Eastern Time in New York, they had received a report that a Fox News correspondent was injured due to an attack in Kyiv. They didn't even know who yet. They just said he had press credentials with your name on it. That's how bad it was, I guess. So the story reads, Fox News State Department correspondent Benjamin Hall, that guy, was injured while reporting from Kyiv, Ukraine, Monday. Earlier today, our correspondent was injured while gathering news outside of Kyiv. Let's see. We have a minimal level of details right now, but Ben is hospitalized. Our teams are on the ground. They're working to gather additional information as the situation quickly unfolds. He's been working there from Kyiv, even as Russian troops closed in on the city in the recent weeks. Safety of our entire team of journalists in Ukraine and the surrounding regions is our top priority and of utmost importance. This is a stark reminder for all journalists who are putting their lives on the line every day to deliver the news from a war zone. That's why they're called combat correspondents. I have a theory, and I'll make it brief. The Russians are cracking down on social media and the media in their own country. They realize that if they silence the narrative in Ukraine, they can continue to get away with whatever they think they're getting away with. Well, most of the journalists wear a bright blue plate carrier that says press across it and a blue helmet. When they're driving around the cities of hot zones, they have to leave their helmet on. And it wouldn't surprise me one iota if the Russian military wasn't ordered to take out anyone wearing the blue vest and blue helmet, because they're really easy to spot. They're trying to silence the media on theater now. Just a theory, but so far it's proven pretty scary in the last 2 days. 2 days, 2 journalists. 1 killed, 1 injured. Actually, sorry. 2 days, 4 journalists. 1 killed, now 3 injured. And they're American. That's not Article 5. Because it's not territory. Moving on. 2 minutes later, and this builds off the last story, actually. 2 minutes later, this happened. Oh, not that one. Sorry. This one. Yeah. See that woman back there? See that sign there? Yeah. A woman interrupted a live broadcast of Russian television to deliver an anti-war message, carrying a sign that read, "Stop the war. No to war. Don't believe the propaganda. They are lying to you here," according to that translation of that sign, right? That happened on live TV in Russia. Now, people are like, the chick up front didn't break her character. She never stopped. She never turned around. She just kept staring at the camera, kept talking, while this chick was talking with that sign. And everyone's like, who the hell is that? Right? Because she just signed her own death warrant, right? Well, wouldn't you know, an hour later after this, that person made it home and jumped on Twitter. And guess who? You know who she is? Well, here she is. Hey, baby. Right? Yeah. 12:13 a.m. Moscow time. Yep. She had time to go home. She got away with it. She got home. She posted a picture of her own face. Yeah. Her name is Marina Ovsyannikova. She's pretty good looking. The Russia's first channel employee. She works for the same station. Ran onto a live state TV news to protest the war, posted a video to social media explaining her actions. What's happening in Ukraine is a crime, and Russia's the aggressor. And there's only one person responsible for this. That man, Vladimir Putin. Ovsyannikova. Huh?
Nobody's arguing that except,
Yeah, I've been saying that every day, right?
Yeah, you and I have been saying that every day.
Ovsyannikova said this in her video. My father is Ukrainian and my mother is Russian. They have never been enemies. And this necklace is a symbol. Because it's the colors of both flags. That Russia must immediately stop this war, and our brotherly nations can still come together. Sadly, I've been working on the first channel for the last couple of years. Have been doing Kremlin propaganda, for which I now am very ashamed. I'm ashamed that I let the lies be spread on television. I'm ashamed that I participated in turning Russian people into zombies. We kept quiet when it all started in 2014. We did not rally when Kremlin poisoned Navalny. We have been silently watching this anti-human regime, and now the whole world turned its back on us. The next 10 generations will not be able to get rid of the shame of this war. She's absolutely right. And she's stunning to look at. Like, I think Knives likes her too, because he's asking, can she cook Mexican? I don't know. I don't know. If she makes your blood boil, then obviously she can. Hit her up, Knives. Marina Ovsyannikova. She's a halfie like me. Half Ukrainian, half Russian. All beautiful. Especially the way she thinks. Very, very cool. She's probably on a train headed to Siberia right now. Unfortunately.
Probably. Well, then
All right.
maybe we need to get a group together to break her out.
Yeah, we'll call the Expendables.
Yeah, there we go.
I got a hero somewhere in Hollywood for you. All right. Last two stories. These are going to be really quick ones, actually. 1:15 a.m. Moscow time. Strangely enough, they're up pretty late. Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin signed off on a temporary ban on the export of all grains to the Eurasian Economic Union, according to Russian state media. Russia is introducing well, this is serious. Russia is introducing a temporary ban on the export of grain to the countries of the Eurasian Economic Union, or the EAEU, as well as the export of white sugar and raw cane sugar to third countries. I guess they meant third world countries? I don't know. The resolution on this was signed by Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin. That sounds like Miss Houston. Anyway, restrictions on grain will be valid until June 30th, on sugar until August 31st. Russia is the world's largest exporter of wheat, while Ukraine still ranks in the top 5. So, basically, they're going to stop feeding the world. They're the number 1 exporter of wheat in the world. They export more than we do. I mean, if you see the size of Asia, though, or Russia, which is most of Asia, kind of makes sense, right? They grow a lot of wheat. We use that wheat in beer, like Bock beer, which is making my beer prices higher. Anyway, yeah, they're banning grain, they're banning sugar. They got 2 different times for it, but it sounds like they're trying to be rational about it. In a way, they're like, it's a temporary ban, because I guess they either thought they were going to win or lose this war by those dates, right? Makes sense. All right, so my final story of the day, I'm going to end this on a positive note. This was 8:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There was an announcement made. While Russian forces invade Ukraine and the West responds with unprecedented sanctions, an American astronaut is preparing to hitch a ride with 2 cosmonauts on a Russian spacecraft back to Earth from the International Space Station in about 3 weeks' time. Mark Vandahay, a retired Army colonel, is set to break the record on Tuesday for the longest continuous stay in space by a U.S. astronaut before he departs the ISS on March 30th. There were some fears after Russia invaded Ukraine that the cosmonauts would ditch Vandahay when they returned to Earth in a couple of weeks. Dmitry Rogozin, the head of Russia's space agency Roscosmos and a longtime ally of Putin, posted a video of the U.S. flag being removed from the Soyuz rocket and is publicly sparred with retired U.S. astronaut Scott Kelly. So, if you guys didn't know, there was a video that was put out of 2 Russian cosmonauts waving at this guy as they go back into their part of the ISS and disconnect it from the U.S. part. And then everyone started to worry that when it was time to head home, the Russians would abandon him and leave him there to his fate. Now, there's a couple things that work against this. Number 1, all those guys up in the ISS, they're scientists. They're not politicians. They're looking down at this war just as equally as appalled by it as the rest of us. They're scientists. They're men of science, men and women of science. They're trying to answer the questions that need answering, essentially, right? They're the ones who are going to take us to Mars and beyond if we ever stop fighting amongst ourselves over little scraps of land on this rock, right? Even if they were ordered by the Russian government to leave him, it's not that big a deal. Because SpaceX and Elon Musk, they've been doing cargo runs to the ISS. They have the rockets with the docking collar to go there. Meaning, Elon Musk probably saw this news and instantly called like NASA or maybe even Congress and said, "Hey, don't even worry about it. I got this. I got a rocket ready to go. I thought this was always a possibility. It's got a docking collar. I can have a crew of like 2 or 3 guys on it, and I can have it ready to go within 2 weeks." Like that guy, he's Blofeld and he's also like G.I. Joe at the same time. Like he can save that astronaut if they had to. But it looks like cooler heads prevailed, and the Soyuz will take this guy back down. So it'll be fine. He'll get off in 3 weeks. He'll set a record. They'll touch down. Well, if the Soyuz rocket lands, who's going to collect it? Does it land in the ocean? Because it's not a shuttle, right? It doesn't land. So it's going to land in the ocean probably, like they used to do. Who's going to collect them? Us or the Russian Navy or NASA? And I guess that's going to answer who gets interred where. Because if the Russians pick him up, they'll just take him like a political prisoner. They've already got Brittany Griner. They've already got 2 Marines. If you didn't know, there's 3 Americans that are imprisoned by the Russians right now in Russia. I think 2 were Marines and one's a WNBA basketball player. Hey, why don't we just add a fucking astronaut to that list, right? So that's a question I don't have the answer for. But the one thing I do have an answer for is we've been doing this shit for 2 hours, even though I said it was only going to take an hour. So that being said, I think I'm going to play this. And I'm going to thank you all for bearing with us for a whole lot longer than I thought. Because every time I do one of these, I think I never have enough content for you. And apparently I did. And I'm grateful for you guys for staying up with me longer than usual, especially you, Mike.
Yeah.
So anyway, if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're a regular here, welcome back. Either way, check my other playlist and see if my other interest will be of interest to you. I can guarantee you that this Sunday, I will have another gun review for you, just like I did last Sunday. Oh yeah, and it's a big one. So anyway, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch and putting up with us. This was The War Room, Day 19. We're going to keep doing this until this shit ends, but we'll see you tomorrow. Yeah.
Shall not be infringed.
I was going to say Slava Ukraini.
Heroium Slava.
There you go.